Delhi Law Minister Somnath Bharti has a lot to answer about his shady past. And it's not just about one firm. Headlines today has uncovered at least 5 firms incorporated in the United States which have a trail leading directly to the address of Somnath Bharti. 5 firms, several unanswered questions which are chasing Bharti, but questions which he simply refuses to answer. Headlines today now reveals the Spamnath Bharti case files 2.0 and connects the dots to tell you how all the spam links lead right to the door of Delhi's Law Minister.
Headlines today has already linked the dots connecting Delhi's Law Minister Somnath Bharti to a US-based spamming site, Topsites US. And now, Headlines today has dug out more documentary evidence that proves Bharti had at least 3 other companies operating in the US as well. These companies are My Directory LLC, Web's biggest LLC, and Media LLC. Interestingly, all these companies are registered at the same principal address, C28 Malviya Nagar, New Delhi, 17. The registration address of Bharti's Indian company, Madgen Solution Private Limited, is also the same. Is that too much of a coincidence? Further, the 3 companies, Topsites LLC, Media LLC and My Directory LLC, were dissolved on the same date, the 5th of September 2006. It is easy to establish a direct link between Somnath Bharti and these companies on looking up certain domain names on the Whois search engine and internet response protocol. The Whois search of www.teens-boy.net and of several other sites shows Somnath Bharti as the administrator and technical contact of My Directory LLC and leads to companies registered at the same Malviya Nagar address. We dug further and found out that on the 26th of March 2005, My Directory LLC was renamed as Web's biggest LLC, which still remains operational, but Media LLC was dissolved on the 5th of September 2006.
I think it's absolutely aberrant the way he has been spamming. So I think Kejriwal and his party will have to take a call on such issues. He's already been involved insulting foreigners, foreign women and others. So I think they are setting a very bad example.
Too many questions, very few answers. Headlines today had mailed a 5-point questionnaire to the Law Minister, Somnath Bharti, asking him about the nature of his relationship with these companies and the surprising coincidence of all of them sharing the same address. However, he has chosen not to respond to us. Given Somnath Bharti's silence, is it too much to expect the Chief Minister to act?
All these companies had been registered around the same time as that of shifting of Somnath Bharti's company Madgen Solutions from Khirki to Malviya Nagar. Bharti's evasiveness further raises questions. Was he hiding his US operations from Indian authorities? Did he make any gains from the operations? If so, did he file the returns? Did he sell off his American operations? And if so, what happened to that money? This is Ashish Maharishi reporting for Headlines Today from New Delhi.
We'll break this story up layer by layer to help you understand and fully absorb the gravity of the charges that are being leveled against Somnath Bharti and why it is important for Arvind Kejriwal to take action against his Law Minister and for Somnath Bharti to come clean. He's been threatening to send us a response but so far hasn't. I want to take you through first what is the Topsites scam, and I want to just invite one of our guests for tonight, Prashant Okheroi, one of India's leading experts on cyber journalism, digital journalism, works with cyber media, has been tracking this case since way back in 2005. I want you, Prashant, to first explain to our viewers what is the Topsites scam and why are the charges against Somnath Bharti so critical?
So the Topsites scam was what's called a directory scam. In the old days, the directory scam was done like this. Somebody would take the phone book and start copying it and create some kind of a yellow pages directory and then maybe call you and call maybe 1,000 other people and say that you've been now listed in this very elite directory. And to stay there, you have to pay us. Now the web version of this is what Topsites did. Topsites copied thousands, in fact hundreds of thousands of web details from something called the Open Directory project, which was public domain information, and wrote to all those webmasters, spammed them repeatedly, kept spamming them, saying that you need to be on this elite web directory and search engine and you need to pay us. And some of them did, maybe 1 or 2% or 3% of them paid them. As a result, Topsites claimed a net profit of $1.8 million at one point of time.
Just hold this. Topsites claimed a net profit of $1.8 million a year when it advertised itself for sale at an asking price of $9 million. What do we know so far is the link of Somnath Bharti with Topsites, because initially he denied any link with Somnath Bharti, and then on Friday evening we demonstrated how this firm was registered in his name. He was the administrator, he was the contact person, he was the financier. What was Somnath Bharti's link with this scam itself?
So, first of all, Topsites, the entire spamming which was named by Spamhaus was being done by this company MadGen Solutions, which Somnath has not denied.
He still has it on his election commission affidavit.
Right. And the directors, the two directors are his mother and his sister. And that's listed at Khirki village, and it used to be at C28 Malviya Nagar extension. That is, okay, that's concrete evidence. Number two, there is his visiting card which says Somnath Bharti CEO with the C28 address, which various people including Conrad Longmore, this person who actually first wrote about it, has put it out. You can call it circumstantial. The critical stuff is the digital footprints. Those are very clear in all of those domains, including Topsites US, the admin contract, the ABT contract.
Just take a look at this. I want our producers also to cut to this full screen so that our viewers can see this nicely. Topsites LLC, we already demonstrated last Friday how it was linked with Somnath Bharti. Our colleague Ashish Mehrishi has now dug out Media LLC, My Directory LLC, Web's Biggest LLC, all of them registered at the same address, C28 Malviya Nagar, New Delhi, Delhi 17. That is the registered address in the American Registrar of Companies, and all of them are registered in Somnath Bharti's address. Now he says he doesn't know who did this. Is that at all believable? And I want to play out now one graphic which demonstrates how Somnath Bharti is settled. There was a lawsuit by one of the most influential lawyers on spamming in the United States, a gentleman by the name of Balson. Somnath Bharti settled. Bharti agreed to use only confirmed opt-in email addresses when sending commercial messages or spam. He settled for $5,000 in damages. Who is this person who sold him? What more can you tell us about the charges? Because it's so technical and there's so much minutiae involved, I want you, Prashant, to explain that to our viewers.
So, in this case, because of MadGen Solutions being listed in that Spamhaus directory, he kind of, his name got prominent. Conrad Longmore wrote about it. He was one of the admins of the Open Directory project. This particular lawyer who sued was actually one of those lawyers who does go around suing for various things, and he specializes in spam. So he's actually got a case, a record of going after people who spam. And he got a series of these mails from Mr. Bharti's company, MadGen, saying that, you know, please.
So Somnath Bharti, in his defense, says he settled, and I've got this over here, because it would have been costlier to fight the case in the US. Therefore, I settled. But is settling also an admission at some level of guilt? If you aren't guilty, if you aren't linked, why would I settle?
So he doesn't deny that his company sent the spam out. What he did when I first wrote about it, he sent this little response out which said that, hey, I didn't know what was happening. It was my nephew. Well, it was an associate who did it. And I didn't know anything about that. When I came back, I found my associate had spammed. Now that's bizarre, because that spam didn't happen over a period of a few days. It happened across years. It happened around 2003, 2004 when he was sued, and continued to happen through 2005.
Okay, thank you very much, Prashanto. Did Somnath Bharti declare his links with these US firms to Indian authorities? Why is this question important, Ashish?
Rahul, the most important part here is that if you have opened a company abroad, you have to declare it, and you have to, if you have opened a bank account abroad, then you have to bring it to the notice of the RBI. Here, on the first instance, he says that he's got nothing to do with this company, so obviously we take it, you know, on the pretext of it that he would have said that he would have not taken any permission. Now it is too
one second. I don't want to be unfair to Somnath Bharti. He hasn't answered this question. So this is an important question. If you can see it on your screen, did Somnath Bharti declare that he had this maze of companies in the United States that were operating through him? he hasn't answered us. We sent this questionnaire to him first 2 weeks ago. He came up with a set of answers which were completely bogus. We ripped them apart when we did our broadcast last Friday. We sent them this set of questions. They haven't answered those questions.
We had sent a questionnaire on Friday as well. He didn't answer.
And I want to listen. So I'm not jumping to any conclusion. I want to listen myself to what Mr. Somnath Bharti has to say. Did he declare to Indian authorities that he had this maze of companies? Is it a mere coincidence that all companies are registered at Somnath Bharti's address? And I want to say, so far, we haven't heard at all from the Aam Aadmi Party. I was told by the person who handles the guest coordination for the Aam Aadmi Party that Rahul Mehra would be joining us on this broadcast. He has refused to join us. He says he will not participate. Now, this is a party that is first when it comes to asking questions of Modi, of Rahul Gandhi, of Gadkari, but they're completely deadly silent. Thank God we've got Kamal Mitra Chinoy from the Aam Aadmi Party as a member, not as an official spokesperson, but as a member. He's joining us on this broadcast and he's listening intently to these details. I'm coming to you, sir, in just a moment. Take a look at the next question I've got for Mr. Bharti. Can Somnath Bharti get away by claiming that he doesn't know who registered these companies?
Now, sir, it is very surprising, Rahul, if you have to register a company either in India or abroad, you have to file a residential proof. And if your residential proof is being used, now you have to watch the date. In March 2004, Topsites LLC and other companies were registered. In October 2004, he shifted from Khirki extension to C28 Malviya Nagar. Now it is surprising if your residential address is being used, your name is being used at the time of the booking of the domain name, and you don't know.
No,
and
but
it's a case of impersonation.
No, that raises another question. His defense is that somebody did this. I didn't want him to do it, an associate did this. In which case, Mr. Somnath Bharti, please answer the next question. Why did Somnath Bharti not lodge a case against this so-called associate for fraud? If he indeed misused Somnath Bharti's identity, it has been 8 years since. If this gentleman misused your name, why have you not filed a case for fraud against him? Why have you not sued him? You've got a very strong case if what you're saying is true, but you haven't, and that raises the last question. US registry records, their equivalent of the registrar of companies, shows that Webb's Biggest, that's one name, LLC, is still an active company registered at Somnath Bharti's India address. If this is the case, why did Somnath Bharti not declare this in his affidavit before the Election Commission? Now this is appalling. You submit an affidavit. How do we know, first and foremost, that this Webb's Biggest LLC is indeed active at this time?
It is. You can go to the website. You can see the Secretary of the State of Iowa. Just go there, do a business entity search. Find out
what does it throw up?
You will automatically get the name of the company. There is a normal company. You just type Webb's Biggest. You will get the article of amendment. You will also get from where this company has come. All details are available on that website itself. Now all you need to do is to find out whether this company is active or not, because the name of the company has been changed and then it has become Webb's Biggest. It was earlier My Directory LLC, which has been converted into Webb's Biggest.
Let's
LLC.
get some... Professor Chinoy, you've seen the proof. Black and white, transparent, it's out in the public domain. I want to begin by asking you, sir. Ashish, just come back. We'll come back there later. Is it okay for Arvind Kejriwal and the Aam Aadmi Party to brazen through this and not give any answer? I'm not saying I have all the answers. I put out the questions. I'd like to know the answers from the Aam Aadmi.
I don't think Arvind is running away from anything.
Yes.
He's busy now with the Jan Lokpal bill.
Sure.
And with the procedures required. There's a controversy. Soli Sorabji says that those procedures are not required. And then there is the problem with the Delhi police, who are saying that the Ram Leela Maidan or any space like that cannot be secure, though we know that all sorts of functions from cricket matches to Ram Leela performances take place there in other places and are secure. So I think he's got quite a bit on his plate. I don't think he would tackle this just himself. We have techies in Aam Aadmi.
Yes.
He tried to get people who are very good. And from what I've heard just now, because I don't know this very well at all, that there are digital footprints also which link Mr. Bharti to that. And that is a very serious thing, and I'm sure Aam Aadmi will look at it.
No, so just on the basis of the evidence that's been laid out so far, as a very smart, intelligent citizen, what do you make, sir, of the evidence that's been put out in the public domain? So,
well, there is certainly a case to be answered, not only because of the quality of the evidence, but if a news channel asks a politician to explain something which seems to be irregular, then it is necessary for the politician's reputation and the party's reputation that be clarified as soon as possible. So as a non-techie, that's the most I can say, but I'm pretty sure that Aam Aadmi must be gearing up for this, shifting.
Is it because they have no answers? I want to introduce at this time some of our other participants who are joining us on this program. We've got Dr. Kiran Walia, who ironically was the candidate from the Congress party who lost to Somnath Bharti in Delhi in the Malviya Nagar constituency, I think it was. Sanjay Kaul representing the BJP tonight. Captain Gopinath joining us from Bangalore. With me in the studio, Pawan Duggal, one of India's foremost experts on cyber law. Prashanto Roy, you've already met. I want to go across to Dr. Kiran Walia first and get her sense on the deadly silence we are encountering from the Aam Aadmi Party. Usually, they're the first to jump up and down, demand answers, and immediately say we will hang someone, arrest someone, throw them out. That's the extent to which they go, almost as an instant reaction. So far, we haven't heard a word from Arvind Kejriwal. What are you making, Dr. Walia, of this deadly silence?
Well, Rahul, one is getting used to the double standards that they adopt for judging themselves and for judging others. What is absolutely scandalizing is that your channel had brought this out earlier also. But one is, yet to understand the technical aspects of it, which I'm not very familiar with. But on the face of it, I know that Mr. Bharti had denied that he had anything to do with the company. And then he later accepts. He's so used to this kind of a behavior that, the way he's absconding, the way he's not attending, addressing the summons of Delhi Commission for Women, the way he tried to influence witnesses in a case which Delhi High Court had reprimanded him for, and the way as a law minister to be doing this, I think that it is enough time that Mr. Kejriwal took notice of these more than misdemeanors and asked him to resign. If not that, then the kind of standards Mr. Kejriwal expects from every other politician, he must adopt himself. That would bring him some kind of acceptability and belief that he actually is committed to a cause, not only of corruption, but of women, of scandalizing things, of slush, and this kind of porn site that he's being, somehow engaged with needs further probe. And I hope that the cyber crime experts would really pinpoint and determine in verifiable manner that this was a serious crime. On the face of it, it does look very serious. Doesn't behoove a politician to be behaving like this.
You're saying this is very serious. It doesn't behove a politician to be acting like this, especially not those who claim to set the highest standards and they wish that others emulate those standards. Sanjay Kaul, what are you making of the charges that have been leveled and the deadly silence? Our camera person reached Rahul Mehra's residence. He was supposed to join us from 9 to 9:30. He's asked our camera person to leave. He says he will not join this broadcast. I know on good authority that he's seen all these documents. He knows what facts there are. I would have liked to hear from him as a Supreme Court lawyer on his defense. He's not prepared to give a defense. He's not prepared to join this broadcast. He thinks they can get away by not even answering the questions. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I'd like to know from the Aam Aadmi Party what they have to say. Sanjay Kaul, what do you make of this deadly silence?
Well, actually, to begin with, I differ a bit with you in the sense that I do believe that the Chief Minister was pretty emphatic and he did react to this news. Although he did it in a very strange fashion. If you remember the entire episode of picketing the Rail Bhavan and that night on the road was basically actually, although it seemed like he was protesting against the police, was actually an act of defense in favor of his law minister. So let's not forget the genesis of how that entire thing started. And to that extent, I have to say that the Chief Minister has defended Mr. Bharti, and your questions are valid, of course, but also I think the other panelists said that it's a very difficult thing for a politician to actually have that sort of a record. But I have seen the flagrant sort of dissonance exhibited every time they apply rules and standards to themselves vis-a-vis other people. So I'm really not surprised in that sense.
Okay.
Although, fact of the matter is that the points that you have raised actually prompted me to also tweet the other day to ask whether a person, a law minister particularly, could have that sort of a background, could even continue in office.
I want to put that question to Captain Gopinath. He's a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, and I also want to welcome on this broadcast Conrad Longmore. He is a top-notch international cyber digital journalist. He's been tracking this case very, very closely along with Prashanto for several years now. He in fact is the first gentleman long before Somnath Bharti became Delhi's law minister. In a larger investigation he'd done on spamming internationally, he'd written a piece which had elements of what Somnath Bharti had been up to. This is not a new matter. Conrad Longmore has been tracking it since 2004. But first I want to go across to Captain Gopinath. As a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, this wall of silence that we are facing from Arvind Kejriwal, the wall of silence that we are facing from Somnath Bharti himself, do you think to redeem their morality, to redeem the standards that they believe they set and follow and want others to follow, Somnath Bharti should immediately come out and answer the questions we are asking him, sir?
Yeah, I think I already said earlier as my personal opinion that Somnath Bharti should have been either sacked or suspended in the first instance, when this fracas or the unseemly behavior that took place in the raid on the African women. And I think on this particular case, I'm not a technical guy. I think Mr. Kejriwal should have ordered an investigation, an independent investigation which will have credibility. And Somnath Bharti himself should have come and answered. There's no point running away. And an independent investigation can come out with the facts. But I came here on the debate of the Jan Lokpal bill, on which I'm supporting them, though I disagreed with them on many other counts. And I continue to disagree on the Somnath Bharti episode. I think more important than this, in the earlier episode, he should have been suspended on the grounds that if you're suspending the police personnel because they can influence witnesses, I think what is good for the goose is good for the gander, and Somnath Bharti should have also been suspended, or whatever term you use for ministers to step down till such time my investigation was complete.
That if you want police officers to back off while a probe is on, Somnath Bharti must do the same. You've heard this now from Captain Gopinath, you've heard the same from Kamal Mitra Chinoy, two members of the Aam Aadmi Party, and I was told that Dilip Pandey, who's a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, would join us from 9:25 p.m. onwards. He's now saying he will not come. I simply cannot believe this. Nobody from the Aam Aadmi Party is prepared to come and answer straightforward questions on what Somnath Bharti has been up to and why he's still a minister. And if there are answers, I would like to hear those answers. We haven't heard any answers. I want to go across to Conrad Longmore, and I must begin by congratulating you, sir, on having put this investigation together, really setting the pace. Everyone else has been tracking, following up, looking at different leads, but you way back in 2004 put this story out first. Explain, how did you stumble upon Somnath Bharti, and what do you make of this in the larger context of spamming worldwide, sir?
Well, I started to receive spams from an organization called Topsites US, asking me to renew my own entries in the Open Directory project. And I found out that quite a lot of other people were having the same problem with the same sort of spam emails. So I dug a little bit deeper in this, and I traced it back to a gentleman in the United States called Paul Aunger, who appeared to own the company, Topsites LLC, that was involved. But as time went on, the name Somnath Bharti kept cropping up. So his name crops up in all sorts of places, including the IP addresses where the sites were hosted and the email was being sent from, the whois details for some of the domains, and also the address. And it rapidly became quite obvious that there are at least two people involved in this operation, Mr. Aunger in the US and Mr. Bharti in India. And at the time, and this is 10 years ago, so spam has changed a little bit since then, it was a big issue for an awful lot of people who were very, very annoyed about the amount of spam that they were getting for this. and the spam reached such a level that Mr. Bharti earned a place in the Spam House top 200 list of spammers worldwide, which isn't the sort of thing that most people would aspire to, I think.
Can you explain what you think, sir, of Somnath Bharti's defense? Somnath Bharti says in his defense that an associate, possibly Paul Ongna, misused my name. I have no idea about Topsites LLC, Media LLC, My Directory LLC. I don't know anything about these companies. They're registered in my name. I'm the administrator. I am the financier. I am the go-to person for all these companies. But I don't know what my associate was doing. Do you find that explanation plausible, Mr. Longmore?
I don't find that explanation plausible at all. His
Why
name
not?
is all over the operation, in so many different places. On his business card, it's mentioned on his personal website. Back in 2003, he links himself to Topsites. It's on the ownership details for the domains and the IP addresses, plus some of the internal correspondence from the company as well. And I've had emails over the years from people who've known Mr. Bharti who've linked him into this organisation. I find the claims to not know anything about it to be completely extraordinary.
Okay, just stay with me. I know that you have a meeting to go back in, but since you're the top expert on this along with Prashanto, I'd like you to stay with me for 5 minutes. I want Pawan Dugal to give us a sense of what he makes of the explanation that Somnath Bharti has been able to come up with. And if our producers could run that explanation, this is the first and the only response we've received from the Aam Aadmi Party. They haven't spoken since, but in this explanation they say there is this associate who misused the name of Somnath Bharti, and Somnath Bharti doesn't know anything. It is registered in his name, he's the administrator, but Somnath Bharti knows nothing.
Well, Rahul, it's hard to currently comment on anything because I've not looked at the papers. I don't know what the evidence is. But the fact still remains is that I can only talk about the law. And the law says that in India in 2005, 2006, 2004, there was no law on spam. So when you did any spam activity, it was not illegal in the country.
Sure.
So that being the case...
But that was not the case in the United States, and these companies were all registered in the US. In the US since 2003, Prashanto, correct me if I'm wrong, there has been a law against spamming. It is only after that that all these ventures shifted out of the United States because the law from 2003 became very stringent.
Absolutely. And we're also not just talking spam here, we're talking scam, and we're talking possible FEMA violations.
So what could be the FEMA violation?
Well, if he's making a lot of money in Topsites, which he clearly has, based on what he's been advertising, where did those millions of dollars go? Those are not declared in any affidavit of his.
I want to understand from Kamal Mitra Chinoy about Somnath Bharti's defense. He says some associate of mine misused my name and my address got misused, my name got put over there. I don't know anything. Does it not strike you as strange that the law minister would not want to register an immediate case against this associate? 7-8 years have passed, he still hasn't filed a case. If somebody misuses your name and you end up having a link with porn websites, if you end up becoming one of the world's worst, most notorious spammers, surely you'll sue the pants of that guy.
Well, I would imagine if there was anything irregular, need not be millions of dollars, a person would move immediately. Now, how an associate managed to move millions of dollars from his home and from his probably digital network, that is something you have to answer. You don't have to be a lawyer to answer that question. It's a fairly commonsensical
Okay, Pawan Dugal is a lawyer.
He's
and
a law
not
minister.
taking any sides, and I appreciate that, Mr. Dugal. If somebody had misused your name or my name, Prashanto's name, Ashish's name, and ended up with us being on the list of the most notorious spammers globally, only 3 Indians, one of them happens to be our law minister, would Somnath Bharti not have taken immediate, prompt and very stringent legal action against this associate?
Again, Rahul, I'll really restrain from making any comments because I've not seen the papers, but the fact still remains that you can only do so much as what the law provides. If the law is defective, well, that be it. If the law has been amended in 2008,
no, but I'm asking you a question.
Yeah.
If somebody misused Somnath's name, then surely the law minister will want to take some sort of action against this former associate?
Well, clearly, you'll have to apply the test of a reasonable man. A reasonable man with reasonable prudence, what he's expected to do under reasonable circumstances is what the Supreme Court says is the logical test to be applied. But again, in this facts, you'll have to quickly appreciate that I don't have to look at the papers. You've been showing up certain things. That's your version. I'm looking at Twitter. There are a lot of other comments simultaneously happening. So I think it's a matter that would require appropriate examination.
Which is the first step to an appropriate discussion is to hear from Somnath Bharti himself. These are companies registered in his name, Mr. Somnath Bharti, and I know that you're watching this broadcast tonight. Here is an open appeal, live on Headlines Today. You pick the time, you pick the place, I will come over tomorrow and interview you. Straight questions, no rhetoric, we'll put out the facts. I'd like to hear from you, and I think all of India wants to hear from you what you have to say in response to each of the specific questions our investigation throws up. Prashant.
So I think, Pawan, the simpler question, the way this could be put is, sure, spam itself was not mentioned or not covered in the IT Act of 2000, but what was covered was communications which carried prurient, pornography, for example. There was a mention of that. Now, in this case, we're talking of communication, spam, which is carrying a solicitation to something that leads to possible fraud. Presumably, if that is established, that was a violation of Indian law?
Well, let me tell you, the law was very clear. The law only, first of all, the Information Technology Act 2000 is silent on the word spam. Spam was nowhere a part of the objective of the law. Well, the law on pornography is well established. Section 67 of the IT Act says if you publish, if you transmit or cause to be published anything in the electronic form which is lascivious or which appeals to the prurient interests, or the effect of which is to tend to deprave and corrupt the minds of those who, having regard to the relevant circumstances, are likely to see, read or hear the same. That is an offence under Section 67 of the Information Technology
Act.
Act.
Email which seeks to defraud? Would that violate Section 420 of the IPC, for example?
Well, again, the question is, given the fact that it was the IT Act was thoroughly deficient.
What about IPC 420?
Well, IPC 420 could be applied in the event the relevant parameters of 420 would be made applicable there. But the question is, at the time when your mother legislation on the digital format is silent on spam.
I want to go across to Sanjay Kaul and also to Dr. Kiran Walia and then to Conrad Longmore on whether it would not be the most appropriate and the most obvious thing for Somnath Bharti to do if he found that an associate was misusing his name, and the empty chair you see is the chair which would have been occupied by a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, except that Dilip Pandey is refusing to sit, and therefore we don't have an official voice from the Aam Aadmi Party. And I was told that they will answer these questions. I was told they've gone through the documents, they have a response and they'd be sharing it with our viewers, but clearly they're not willing to do that. Sanjay Kaul, would it not be obvious for Somnath Bharti to sue this associate if he misused his name and got him into trouble? Made him out to be one of the world's most notorious spammers. If someone does that to you, what would you do? Sanjay Kaul.
Yeah, I think the context is being completely missed here, and it's not just, before I come to that, Rahul, I hope my designation is corrected. Somebody reported to me that it's been wrongly represented.
Well, so you're a member of the BJP, that's exactly what we're saying. Go on.
That's correct. Okay, sorry. So the point is that, if you look at the context, your question actually assumes more meaning. It's, when you have a company and you have a partner, and there are people running a company, you can't really escape responsibility. There is a certain set of liability, and the law may be as it is, but fact of the matter is when it comes down to basically discussing responsibilities, you will have your share. So that is one. The other is, of course, it's very valid that if you think that you are being cheated or somebody is actually using your name for purposes other than fair, what is fair, then I think you would like to take action. But more importantly, I think what is also being lost is that this is the law minister of Delhi that we are discussing. And please understand that you cannot afford to have this sort of a character or this sort of a background in the law minister. And worse, you can't have a party which came on so strongly on the platform of bringing purity back into politics, have a person like this as a mnemonic, as an icon for the party. So I think they have to answer for it many ways, because a lot of people are losing faith in what they
I don't want to get into the politics of this. Whether people are losing faith, not losing faith is a different matter. We are focusing purely on facts that are being put out. And I want to understand from Captain Gopinath, as a man who ran a very successful aviation company, and you understand a thing or two about how businesses operate, if somebody misuses your name, sir, is it not your responsibility either to take action against him? And in any case, if you've got a company registered in your name, you can't turn around and say, I don't know who's doing this. He's doing this without my permission. He's got a pawn link. He's sending out all these spams. He's one of the most notorious spamsters in the world. And Somnath Bharti says, an associate of mine did it. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I think prima facie, whatever he's saying holds water. If your partner misuses your business, obviously you have to take him to task. But I think more than the legal hair splitting here, whether Spam Act was there or not there, and someone said it could be a violation of FEMA because you are not declared income. I think the right thing to do would be the party must order an independent investigation, and Somnath Bharti himself must come in front of the TV and give an explanation so that his credibility is restored because it has already been, I think, lost in the last episode.
Okay.
So he should. I think the issue is much beyond the legal. I think the issue is whether his behavior was ethical, whether his behavior was something which behoved the standards of the office that he is holding and the party that has all these ideals. So if that has been violated, even if he has not crossed the legal line, I think he has to answer.
Somnath Bharti is obviously watching this broadcast live. He's live tweeting us as we put out this investigation, and he says that he served a legal notice. So I had my legal team pull out that legal notice while this program is going on. I've had an opportunity to go through it. Somnath Bharti has raised several questions in this legal notice. There are about 34 points, 30 of which happen to be questions. But Mr. Bharti, if you're watching this broadcast now, I very clearly know that you are. We will answer these questions, but we've asked you some questions. Why don't you answer those questions first? What was your link? Just get my producers to put those questions up on the screen against. What is your link with all these other American companies? Did you declare them to Indian authorities? Did you sell them? If you sold them, did you pay taxes with the RBI? Is there a FEMA violation involved? These are all questions, Mr. Bharti, you must answer. Those are questions I haven't so far seen answers to. I am seeing, kindly provide proof in your possession showing my client having registered a company under the name and the style of Topsites LLC in the USA. Kindly provide the documents of its incorporation. Kindly provide the details of the finances that were paid by my client. One second. We have put out facts in the public domain. These are accessed from the US Registrar of Companies. It's not very difficult in the state of Iowa. You can access them yourself, and of course you know about them. All of them are registered in your residence address. How is it that they are registered, Mr. Bharti? Tweet back. If you don't want to come on live, please tweet back. You're watching this broadcast, you're giving us completely the wrong answers. Conrad Longmore, he sent us 30 questions, 34 points, 30 of which are questions. He hasn't answered a single question that's been put to him. What do you make of this legal notice?
I find it absolutely amazing that he won't come out to defend himself with a point of view that isn't in any way credible. Mr. Bharti has just denied and denied and denied having anything to do with it, and yet his name is all over so many different elements of this. But one thing we don't know is who actually owns these companies. You can go onto the Iowa Secretary of State's website and have a look at these companies, and it only comes up with an address and not the ownership details. Now, I know from my research that there was another man involved in this, and the company Webb's Biggest LLC, which is one that you listed, was involved in what's called a reverse takeover of a U.S. firm called EdgeTech Services, and the capital from that went into this other firm, and then the Webb's Biggest LLC company was taken over by another company called Advisors LLC, which is a vehicle of Mr. Paul Unger. Now, this information is all available in SEC filings in the U.S. So I question whether or not he owns them, but certainly the evidence is that he's involved in them. And if his involvement was minor, why doesn't he just come out and explain exactly what that involvement is?
We are not, Mr. Bharti, jumping to any conclusion. It's almost like you can talk to him live, he can't talk back, he can tweet back, of course. We're not jumping to any conclusion. We have no axe to grind. We are putting out documents. Your name is registered as the name of the administrator, the contact person, the financier on all these companies. We're asking you, sir, only why are you not coming out and answering? And I want to put that question to Kiran Walia from the Congress. Is it possible, Dr. Walia, for a moment, if we were to concede that maybe there is this gentleman, Paul Ogner, in the US who did all of this without Somnath Bharti's permission, that he set Somnath Bharti up? I mean, he has no answer for why he didn't sue Mr. Ogner, but is it possible that someone could have done it? Because in law, the liability is still yours. Is that not correct, Prashant? That's the law. Okay, so now, if it's established that the liability is still that of Somnath Bharti, but is it possible that someone took him for a ride? Are you prepared to concede that?
Rahul,
yes.
I think that's a very pertinent point that you raised. Even a layperson knows if his signatures are forged, you make a case out of a 420 case or under the Indian Penal Code and you report to the police. What to talk of such big company that's handling all this and the kind of work that is engaged in? Somnath Bharti, I think on the face of it, prima facie, is pretending to be blissfully ignorant about how his name is being used, what's happening, and ignorance is not excused in the eyes of law. So I think that he'll have to face what the legal consequences of this will be. But for credibility of the Aam Aadmi Party, it must be heartbreaking for all those who supported it for bringing and cleansing politicians' way of functioning in public domain. Must be really, really heartbroken for the way things are happening. And the earlier they institute an inquiry, the better for them and better for all of us. It's really required to do. After all, what is done Lokpal Bill planning to do is to make people accountable at the highest level, including the Chief Minister. But when it comes to these issues, they gloss over it. So you're not really interested in issues immediately at hand, but you talk big, big things about this full statehood and so on and bringing a thing. I mean, I think that is absolutely total pretense.
Conrad Longmore, what do we know about this Paul Ogner character? We've been researching ourselves very hard, digging deep, trying to find out more. He seems a very shady, very mysterious character. What do you know through your independent investigations about this so-called associate who misused Somnath Bharti's identity?
He is a very mysterious character. There's barely enough evidence to prove that he exists, apart from some residential records for when he was in California, some court records when he was divorced from his wife, and some filings that were made in the US about this company called Edge Tech Services, or now Inova Technology, that he partly owns. And that is all I've ever been able to find out about him. He's a very mysterious person. And I do suspect that he took a very large amount of the money that the Topsites spam, or scam if you like to call it, made, and he used it himself for his own purposes to take over this other company. So I certainly don't think that Mr. Bharti is sitting on millions of US dollars, but I would be surprised if he hadn't received some sort of compensation for the work that he was doing. And we know from the Topsites' own figures, this was millions and millions of dollars that were being involved, and even a small amount of that could be a significant sum.
Sure. We don't know what the financials are. I promise you, our reporters are digging and digging very deep to try and see if we can establish whether these companies were sold or not. But that's really where the law enforcement agencies also need to come in. What do you know, Prashanto, about this gentleman, Paul Ogner? Who is this associate? Where is he now?
You know, it's
He's in the Bahamas, Ashish, that's what you were telling me?
Yes, yeah.
What's he doing in the Bahamas? Does he still run shady operations, or he's having a good time there? With all the money that he's made, we don't know. On a more serious note, we don't know where he is.
We don't know where he is. But Rahul, more importantly, one has to realize that his address is there. His name appears in the Who Is search. The websites have been booked from the same address, that is C28 Malviya Nagar. The companies are registered in Iowa, which is a state in United States. It cannot be a mere coincidence that your company, that is Madgen Solutions, has C28 as the address during the same time. The same address is also for the US companies, the 5 companies that we have. All 5 companies have got the same address, whether it is Topsites LLC, My Directory LLC, Media LLC. Why he's created so many companies, it is beyond understanding. If all these things exist together and still he denies it, that he's got nothing to do with it, it is almost impossible to believe
Who is Paul Ogner? What do you know about him, Prashant?
You know, very little. Like Conrad was saying, he seems extremely mysterious. He barely seems to exist, or he's very, very good at not leaving his digital footprints, and so there is that remote possibility.
That's not something Somnath Bharti is very good at.
No,
he's got his digital footprints all over this. He even Kamal Mitra Chinoy tried to delete all these web caches, not understanding that there are people like Conrad Longmore, people like Prashanto who can dig that out. In 2011, there was a massive cleanup job where they tried very hard to get rid of all this information.
And I'll give you one more information. Topsites.us, the owner has changed today morning.
This morning?
This morning.
Who was the owner before that?
The owner, I'll get you the details. I have that with me. I just received that mail. The owner has been changed today itself in the morning.
This is it's a hatchet job, very poorly done. And what Somnath Bharti seems to forget is that on the internet, you leave your trail behind. You can't, just push it away.
Similarly, this All Web Hunt, which was another site similar to the Topsites thing, was suddenly pulled off when there was a media report a few days ago, and suddenly it was taken off. But it is there in the cache. So,
Kamal Mitra Chinoy, what do you think must happen next?
Well, I agree with Captain Gopinath that there should be an
As a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, are you embarrassed by Somnath Bharti?
Of course I'm embarrassed. I didn't join the Aam Aadmi Party to look at this. But since I have looked at it, I think there should be an independent investigation. And if there is any prima facie evidence in the independent
investigation... So who do you think
investigation,
should do this independent investigation?
well, there's definitely going to now, it seems, be some kind of legal or quasi-legal investigation by one of the state agencies which is involved. Though we've been told
there are... Should the Delhi police, especially if these charges are untrue, and here's what everyone in the Aam Aadmi Party who's watching this broadcast should do. If these charges are untrue, I have a very simple proposition. Order a probe. Let the truth come out. This is what Arvind Kejriwal has said about 1 million people. He's got a list of 22 corrupt netas. He says order an independent probe. So you set up through the Delhi police. If you don't trust the Delhi police, you pick a judge you trust. Let him order a probe. Somebody who understands cyber security and cyber crime. Let him order a probe. Captain Gopinath, do you think that's the right way to go? Let the Delhi police order whoever they think appropriate. Let him investigate Somnath Bharti.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 points here. One is the most important thing is for Somnath Bharti to come clean, and if, as you say, he is saying that he doesn't know anything about it. We all know partners cheat. Then he should file a criminal case against the partner. Then he should order an independent investigation so that the truth comes out. And that's the only way to go about this, so that you set an example and you demand the same standards on yourself that you demand from others.
Is that not, Sanjay Kaul, the fairest and the most appropriate way to go? Because Somnath Bharti believes that there are people out there who are taking Prashanto, Ashish, Conrad Longmore all for a ride. They've got a vested interest against the Aam Aadmi Party. If that is the case, order a probe, let the truth emerge. That is what Kejriwal would demand of others, and I think India has the right to demand that of Kejriwal.
Yeah, I think it might even demand a dharna. And I think I completely agree with Captain Gopinath. What he said was absolutely logical. It was right. There are ethical issues involved here. It is not just about the other facts of the case. They may or may not be proven exactly in the fashion that they have been presented or look like. But fact is that the Law Minister of Delhi cannot possibly have a background like this. So obviously the candidates of Aam Aadmi Party are not going through any background checks.
No, because one of the other things, Kiran Walia, that the Aam Aadmi Party is saying, even if Somnath Bharti did all of this while he was in college before he became a lawyer, how can you hold that against what he's doing today? If somebody, when you're in IIT or when you're studying in one of the colleges, you do various things on the side to earn money. Do you think it's fair to hold those actions of the past accountable when it comes to the image and the prestige of the Law Minister of Delhi at this time?
Excuse me, it doesn't really establish credentials of a kind that one should be fighting elections and one should be representing a party like Aam Aadmi Party, which came about only to cleanse the jharu that they were holding. And what has happened is a big expose, and I think that anybody who has had a criminal past, it always takes, how can it excuse anybody who becomes a politician later? That way any criminal would like to become a politician and be above law. This is exactly the whole premise of Aam Aadmi Party is, and I also personally believe that's how we should behave in politics, and therefore anybody who has done this must really face the consequences, and the probe must insist that this person would be dissociated from his office while the probe is on. So this is the only way they can be a
We're at the end
Mr.
of our
Kejriwal must take his
investigation
silence.
for tonight. This, I promise you, is not the end of this story. We will keep digging, and we will dig very hard. He sent another response on Twitter just now, Somnath Bharti. He says, please take your viewers through the contents of my legal notice. Well, Mr. Bharti, I am going through your legal notice, and I am not seeing a single question being answered. We've asked you questions. I will send them to you again if required. I will tweet those questions to you. You can respond. You don't want to come to an interview, respond to them on Twitter, Mr. Bharti. Each of the points that you've raised are questions. You want to know, when did we invite guests to the show? What time did they confirm? How the invitation was sent? How was the confirmation received? Frankly, I think this is absurd.
I want to make
Yes.
one sentence. I think this is no longer just about Somnath Bharti.
Yes.
This also involves the reputation of Aam Aadmi.
Absolutely.
Therefore, an independent investigation and Somnath Bharti not being in a position to interfere with that investigation are the things that are required. And I am sure once the shock of this is over, something will happen. The Aam Aadmi
You will press for it?
I will press for it.
In your capacity as a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, you will press for action to be taken against Somnath Bharti?
If he's found guilty. Because
No, but
as
for
he
that
said,
you need a probe.
yeah, probe, of course.
But so
Probe
far
has
there's
to
no
be-
probe, there's no question of guilt. The guilt
Well,
comes later. First there needs to be a probe, and that
The
hasn't
amount
happened
of times
either.
you've been batting against Somnath Bharti, I'm pretty sure there will be a probe.
Well,
you brought,
that
you brought
depends.
quite a bit of...
We've seen several politicians in the past, hardcore, traditional politicians, brazen out charges. Kejriwal said he would be different. Kejriwal said he would set a different standard. Whether he does or not, or whether he falls prey to what he holds others guilty for, remains to be seen. We will be back with part 3 of the investigation. I'm in no hurry. I don't know when it will be. But we will track this case very, very closely. Somnath Bharti wanted me to read some bits from this legal notice. He said, I wish he'd given some answers. I would have read them out for clarity. There are only questions. Kindly provide the dates when the summons were issued to my client by the Superior Court in California. Kindly provide the document which show. There is no answer. Not a single question has been answered. There are only questions. Nothing has been answered. Not one of the questions that we asked have been answered. And Mr. Bharti, this is not a good enough answer. I'm sorry. I don't want to take sides. I think the only fair way to go is for an independent probe to be ordered. You decide who you think is independent, someone outside the Aam Aadmi Party. You can't, you said send us all the documents. 5 of our members will look at those documents and we will decide whether Somnath Bharti is guilty or not. That's in the form of a Khap Panchayat. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable.
From what you're saying, that it will be difficult to get 5 members to your TV station.
No,
You
but
said
right
the
now no
number-
one's willing to come.
So that's my point.
You know, boycotting the media seems to be the new
it's
thing
not
in fact.
boycotting the media. It's a question of having the expertise to deal with something
No, come
which
out
is...
and answer. Rahul Mehra is a lawyer. He's seen these documents. I know that they did a meeting. He's seen these documents. He should have come out and answered. If these documents were wrong, if the charges were false, he should have trashed them, given them reasoning. We've got Pawan Duggal here. We've got Prashanto Conrad Longmore is listening. They should have come out and answered all the
But
questions.
Mr. Duggal has said that there are grey areas.
Sure,
So that
absolutely.
might be worrying people who want to give us a definitive answer.
Absolutely. We are willing to answer the questions that you've raised, Somnath Bharti, but more importantly, I want to know from you the answers to the questions that we've asked. We'll answer these questions, but that's not in point over here. The major point is for you to answer the questions that you've been asked. We'll be back. Thank you all very much for joining us on Center Stage tonight.